everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, I do ask you to please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So this is the promised follow-up to my last episode, where I discussed the fact that I would be doing a little bit more of a deeper dive into the Elizabeth Warren presidential candidacy announcement and everything that has happened since then. Just to recap, if you didn't listen to that episode, she announced on New Year's Eve that she's forming her exploratory committee, which is the first step to formally announcing that you're running for president, but everybody kind of accepts that as like the acknowledgement that yes, you are at least very, 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 very seriously thinking about running for your nomination. So, yeah. Since then, and you know, it is January 6th, 2019 when I'm recording this, and god damn it, 2020 is already upon us. We're already having to start with this shit. So, I mean, oh my god, I was hoping for a little more of a respite, like maybe a little further into the year before we had to start having these discussions, but here we are. And so Elizabeth Warren announces, and all of a sudden, the first controversy that comes up is the unlikable controversy, which Elizabeth Warren, as it stands right now, has a fairly high unlikable rating. Like, there's more people that dislike her than like her. Okay. There's plenty of reasons for that, and we will be getting into that, because I'm going to do a discussion about this Atlantic piece, which is the first kind of navel-gazing think piece, Elizabeth Warren, if you don't like her, you are a misogynist piece, of what I'm sure will eventually be dozens upon dozens upon dozens by the time we get to November of 2020. But, yeah, so, apparently, now, unlikable is a gendered term, which I'm sure is a shock to every male who has ever run for political office, ever, because it has never been a gendered term. It's not now, but some people want to turn this concept of if you think Elizabeth Warren is unlikable, you're a misogynist. Like, you can't possibly have any legitimate reason for not liking her. No, it's because you hate women, and you don't want to see a woman succeed, and you don't want to see a woman president, so there. So that's the first controversy of, like I said, I'm sure will be many. But let's go ahead and get into the Atlantic piece, and it is titled, "There's a reason many voters have negative views of Warren, but the press won't tell you why." Subtitle: "The media has focused on her comparatively low approval ratings, but not the misogyny that drives them." It's worth noting that a man did write this piece, and as usual, links will be in the show notes if you do want to follow along or read it for yourself. But let's go ahead and get into the first paragraph of this piece. "Read enough news reports about Elizabeth Warren's declaration that she is running for president, and you notice certain common features. In its story on her announcement, the New York Times noted that Warren has become a favorite target of conservatives, and that, in a recent national poll, only about 30% of respondents viewed her favorably, with 37% holding an unfavorable view. The Washington Post observed that Warren's claim that she was Native American has come under relentless attack from Republican opponents." Okay. To that note, it's come under attack because it turns out it was a lie. Like, she's not Native American in any way that anybody would recognize anybody being Native American. And I'm still astonished that that whole situation went down. I mean, that has got to be the biggest unforced political error that I can think of possibly ever in politics. Like, if I was in Elizabeth Warren's position and I had put myself out there as being a certain ethnicity or part of a certain group, and I take a DNA test and it turns out I'm not that, I'm not telling everybody. I'm going to put that shit at the bottom of a drawer somewhere, and y'all are never going to hear about it. But she decided to make that public, and everybody just rightly kind of dragged her for it. And, I mean, it's so stupid. It's such a dumb thing to do to yourself. And especially given what we know now, that she has decided to form an exploratory committee. At that time, she had to have been thinking about starting an exploratory committee about actually running for the Democratic nomination. So why the hell would you do that to yourself? Like, it's just the dumbest unforced error I have ever seen, and it's going to haunt her. Like, it's going to stay with her. It's always going to be a point of attack, and it's nobody's fault but her own. So I'm sorry, I can't really feel a lot of sympathy for her on that one. She did it to herself. Anyway, it also quoted a Boston Globe editorial that called Warren a divisive figure. On CNN, the election analyst Harry Einstein suggested that Warren's very liberal record, combined with the fact that Donald Trump has already gone after her, has made her a, you guessed it, divisive figure whose favorable ratings are not that high. These observations are factually correct. Okay, stop right there. Just this would be the point in the piece where after you figure out and write that sentence, you just close down the laptop and you go do something else with your day. You don't continue the piece. You don't keep going. You just say, you know what? Maybe this is not really going to hang together the way I'm wanting it to hang together, because everything that I just said about people having issues with Elizabeth Warren based on something other than her gender are factually correct. But no, we do not stop there. He keeps going. But they also help create a false narrative, mentioning the right's attacks on Warren plus her low approval rating while citing her very liberal record, and the controversy surrounding her alleged Native American heritage implies a casual relationship between these facts. Warren is a lefty who has made controversial ancestral claims. Ergo, Republicans attack her, and many Americans don't like her very much. Okay, yes, you've pointed out two very valid reasons for people to not like Elizabeth Warren. You cannot like her because she lied. I mean, and I talked about this on an earlier episode where I talked about when this whole controversy was breaking, and I don't come down as hard on her on this as other people do, because from the story that has been told, this is what she was told her ancestry was. And like, if Mimi and Peepaw tell you a story about like your ancestry, you don't really have a reason to question them. Like, you just accept that your family's not lying to you and that that's what it is, and you run with that. And then she found out differently. So like, I don't slam her for, like finding out, but you don't release that shit in public. Like, oh my god. But like I said, I've already discussed that. Let's go back to the piece. But that equation is misleading. The better explanation for why Warren attracts disproportionately conservative criticism and has disproportionately high disapproval ratings has nothing to do with her progressive economic views or her dalliance with DNA testing. It's that she's a woman. Oh, is that it? Is that the only reason why somebody could have a problem with Elizabeth Warren? Is that she has a vagina? Now, I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast before, but these kind of arguments that flatten somebody out to just a single aspect of their being, be it their gender, their race, their sexual orientation, where they grew up, whatever it is, when you flatten somebody out to a single data point in one person's life, that's actually incredibly fucking insulting to the person you're doing that to. You're taking somebody who is a whole person and reducing them to this one characteristic. And you think you're being helpful when you do it, but you're not. You're being incredibly insulting, and you're not helping yourself or the person who you think you're helping by making that argument. So, moving on. As I've noted before, women's ambition provokes a far more negative reaction than men's. From a 2010 article in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, two Yale professors, Victoria Briscoe and Tyler Akimoto, showed identical fictional biographies of two state senators, one male and one female, to participants in a study. When they added quotations to the biographies that characterized each as ambitious and possessing a strong will to power, the male state senator grew more popular. But the female state senator not only lost support among both women and men, but also provoked moral outrage. Okay. To cite a paper and a piece from 2010 in 2019 is to ignore the massive seismic change that has happened over the last 9 years. And I don't think people realize just how much has changed, because it has been a little quiet and a little slow, and there's not been like if Hillary would have got elected president, that would have been considered the big breakthrough moment, but that didn't happen. But there was plenty of other smaller things that have happened between 2010 and 2019 that I'm not going to say completely invalidates this, but I think people are a lot more comfortable with the idea of women running for office, be it state or on a federal level, of women governors, of just women in politics in general, that I don't think it's fair to go back that far to cite something. That's me. So, just this idea that I don't think this is an entirely valid point anymore. And you can even see it in the 2018 midterms. Like, there was an unprecedented amount of women who got elected, of minorities who got elected. I mean, we've got our first actual Native American in Congress. There's a Muslim woman in Congress now. I mean, things have changed an awful lot, and I don't think people talk about them quite as much as we should. But moving on. The past decade of American politics has illustrated Briscoli and Akimoto's findings again and again. Okay, I've already disputed that, but this example that he goes on to cite, just stay with me here. During the 2012 campaign, Republicans attacked Nancy Pelosi in televised commercials 7 times as frequently as they attacked her Democratic Senate counterpart, Harry Reid. In 2016, the disparity was 3-1. Pelosi's detractors sometimes chalk up her unpopularity to her liberalism and her hometown of San Francisco, but Reid's successor as the Democratic Senate leader, Charles Schumer, a liberal from Brooklyn, is far less unpopular than Pelosi and far less targeted by the GOP. Okay. To cite any of this without bothering to give any kind of context as to who Nancy Pelosi was and is again incredibly fucking insulting to Nancy Pelosi. Now, in the 2012 campaign, the reason why Nancy Pelosi was mentioned so often is A, she was coming off of her first tenure as Speaker of the House, which she just now got elected to her second tenure as Speaker of the House, and was also incredibly instrumental in getting Obamacare passed through the House. So, in the 2012 election, obviously, if you remember, it was never just ads attacking Nancy Pelosi specifically. It was tying Pelosi to Obama, to a specific Democratic agenda. And that's where a lot of the attack ads were coming in. And to compare attack ads against Nancy Pelosi to Harry Reid is also to ignore the fact that Nancy Pelosi, first and foremost, was at that point, and is again, the most powerful elected Democrat in Congress. And she's also one of the most nationally well-known. Like, if you did an attack ad back in 2012 on Harry Reid, people would be like, who the fuck is Harry Reid? Like, nobody knows who that is. Nobody knows who Chuck Schumer is outside of our own little political bubble where we know these things. These aren't national figures. They're not name brands, as it were. Whereas Nancy Pelosi is somebody who is nationally recognized and is something of a household name. Like, not as much as Obama was, or Hillary, or Trump, or anybody else. But as far as an actual elected Democrat in Congress, she was probably the most well-known and still is the most well-known. So to try to flatten this out, again, as it just being because she's a woman and completely ignoring everything else about Nancy Pelosi that could possibly be an explanation as to why advertisers would be putting her in attack ads over Harry Reid or Chuck Schumer, you're ignoring the woman's career. Like, and for what it's worth, I mean, I'm no fan of Nancy Pelosi, but what she's done is pretty fucking impressive. So, yeah, just, because you're a woman, like, really? You're going to ignore the whole woman's legacy like that? Like, wow. That's not making the statement you think it's making. The other point that's made here that really made me stop and think, like, did you not read what you just wrote before you wrote it. He makes the argument that during the 2012 campaign, the attack ads towards Nancy Pelosi versus Harry Reid numbered 7-1. And I just explained why that is. But then you make the argument in 2016, the disparity dropped from 3-1. So in the span of 4 years, we went from 7-1 to 3-1. And again, this is still attributed to the fact that Nancy Pelosi is way more popular than Harry Reid or Chuck Schumer or pretty much any male Democrat in Congress. But that's a pretty huge drop between 2012 and 2016. That's 4 years. And granted, there wasn't as much discussion of Obamacare and trying to run against the Democratic agenda in 2016. But if you're going to make the argument that Nancy Pelosi was only being attacked because she was a woman, that number should not have dropped by as much as it did. But it did. And it kind of ruins your argument. But anyway, moving back on to the piece. Or compare Hillary Clinton with the men who preceded her as Democratic presidential nominees. In a spring 2006 study, 538.com subtracted the percentage of Americans who felt strongly unfavorable towards Democratic nominees from the percentage who felt strongly favorable, at the same time in every presidential cycle. For almost every nominee from 1980 to 2012, the result was roughly zero. In other words, the percentage of Americans who really liked them equaled the percentage of Americans who really disliked them, which makes sense given the roughly equal nature of America's partisan split. The one exception was Michael Dukakis, who, as a little-known governor in the spring of 1988, enjoyed a net positive score of more than 10 points. Then, in 2016, everything changed. The percentage of Americans who felt strongly unfavorable towards Hillary Clinton exceeded the percentage that felt strongly favorable by 20 points. Was Clinton uniquely liberal or uniquely dishonest or uniquely inauthentic enough, compared with the 7 male Democratic nominees who preceded her, to explain such a large disparity? Probably not. Gender likely played a key role. So, once again, we are flattening a woman down to her gender to explain why people didn't like her. And uniquely liberal? Not really. But uniquely dishonest and uniquely inauthentic? According to a lot of people, hell yeah, she was. I mean, if you're going to completely ignore somebody's whole backstory and career to try to flatten this down to gender, like, you're being at best disingenuous and at worst, like, really fucking stupid. Hillary went into the whole 2016 with high unfavorable ratings. Like, one of the first things that really floored me when I was reading Hillary's book, What Happened, is her admission that she knew she had a high unfavorable rating and yet still ran that campaign and did nothing about it. Like, are you kidding me? But the reason why she had such high unfavorable ratings is because people already had 20 plus years worth of opinions about the woman. And she is genuinely a divisive figure. Like, she's one of those people, you either love her or you hate her, and there's really no in between. So Hillary is not, as a candidate, is not a good example to prove this particular hypothesis. And as far as comparing 2016 to any election that preceded it, I don't think you can. Like, 2016 was so batshit crazy, off the rails, unlike anything anybody has ever seen before, that, like, you can't compare it to past elections. It's just, there's no way to do it. It's unlike anything we had ever seen in a presidential election. And I think you can use 16 as a benchmark going forward, like 2020, 2024, beyond that. But trying to use it to compare anything that happened before that, I don't think you can. Like, it was too crazy. It was too wild. It was too anomalous. Like, there was just, it was completely abnormal. I mean, completely and utterly fucking abnormal. So I don't like the idea of comparing 2016 to any other presidential election that's ever happened in history. Moving back to the piece. Now the same dynamic is playing out with Elizabeth Warren. Pollsters keep recording her unusually high unfavorable ratings. Last September, CNN found that Joe Biden's net approval rating among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents was 30 points. Bernie Sanders was 18 points. Warren was 2 points. In December, when Quinnipiac University surveyed Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, Biden's net approval rating was 20 points, Sanders was 2 points, Warren's was negative 7 points. Warren's relatively low numbers appear driven by her unpopularity among men. When the University of Massachusetts asked state residents who they supported in the 2020 Democratic primary, Warren tied with Biden among women. Among men, she trailed him by 16 points. Okay. Again, this is using a data set that I don't think is completely intellectually honest to be using for the purpose of trying to prove that there is some kind of vast patriarchal conspiracy against Elizabeth Warren. The reason why Joe Biden consistently ranks so high in these polls is because when was the last time Joe Biden did anything to piss anybody off? Like, the last memories that people have of Joe Biden is being Barack Obama's goofy sidekick for 8 years. Like, most people have a generally favorable opinion of Joe Biden because he calls to mind two things: Amtrak trains and Barack Obama. And so, yeah, people, there's an availability heuristic here. Like, the last time Joe Biden really did anything has been so long ago that people don't really remember. Like, people don't really remember his Senate career at this point. He's just Sheriff Joe, so it's understandable that people have kind of like warmer, fuzzy feelings towards Joe Biden versus they do towards Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, who have been in the public eye much more recently and have done things much more recently that piss people off. So I don't really think that this is an evidence of any kind of conspiracy against Warren. And also to point out that, okay, so in the Quinnipiac poll, if Biden's net approval is 20, Sanders is 2, and Warren is negative 7, that kind of proves my point. Like, and it's funny. It's funny to kind of see how this 2020 field is going to shape up, because so far there seems to be a couple different camps. Like, the Bernie camp is really still pushing for Bernie to, I guess, get in this race, although, like I have said before, as the rules stand right now, he is not eligible to run as a Democrat. But his approval is 2, Warren's is negative 7, and Joe Biden's is 20. Not saying that 2020 should be hashtag old white man 2020, but if you do care about things like approval ratings, which you really should if you're trying to pick a candidate, Biden's kind of lapping the field right now. And that's funny to me. But yeah, just moving on. And this idea, well, actually not entirely moving on. If you are going to make the assertion that men don't like Elizabeth Warren because she is female, and you're going to try to put that out there, I'm going to need to see some very hard data saying that these men who don't want to vote for Elizabeth Warren don't want to do so because she is a woman. Because otherwise, you fall into this same trap that I think happened during Hillary Clinton's candidacy of ascribing ill intent to people who don't mean it. And when you do that, you piss those people off. Like, if you're going to say that, absent any kind of actual hard factual evidence, that the men who don't want to vote for Elizabeth Warren don't want to do so because they're misogynist, that's a really heavy charge to land at somebody, That's like that's like the deplorables comment and the racist comments and just everything from 2016 that just landed so horribly for Hillary Clinton. Like, do not make that same mistake again. It seems to me that not only did the Democratic Party not entirely understand and unpack the loss of Hillary Clinton and why that happened, It's really beginning to look to me, especially based on pieces like this, that the chattering class really didn't figure it out either. And the first thing that they should have really figured out is maybe don't call people really loaded terms without having actual concrete factual proof that these people are what you say they are. Because all you're going to do is push those people into the arms of the other candidate. And I do think there are a lot of people who did vote for Trump out of spite towards Hillary and out of spite towards the quote unquote liberal media and the quote unquote elites and all that shit. So maybe let's not make that mistake again, guys. Maybe learn something. I don't know. Sadly, we are not really anywhere close to being done with this piece, so let's keep it moving here. These polls often find their way into newspaper articles. The New York Times cited the Quinnipiac study in its article about Warren's presidential announcement. On CNN, Harvey Enten discussed her polling ratings at length. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with journalists discussing public perceptions of a candidate. The problem is when journalists ignore what academic research and recent history teach us about gender's role in shaping those perceptions. They imply, whether they mean to or not, that Warren's unpopularity can be explained by factors unique to her. They start with the puzzle of her low approval ratings and then, working backwards, end up suggesting that her policy views, or pseudo-scandals, explain them. Reporters dwell on issues such as Warren's alleged Native American ancestry, not necessarily because they think those issues matter, but because they assume that voters think they matter. If voters didn't, why would Warren be so unpopular? Okay. It is part of what political punditry is to discuss candidates' various numbers, their approvals, their non-approvals, where they have approval, where they don't. It's this part of the country, it's that part of the country, it's over here, it's over there, it's this state, it's that state. That's part of the whole horse race of being a political pundit and discussing especially a presidential nomination slash general election slash what the fuck ever we end up discussing. So it's valid to discuss them. And it's also very valid to point out, and they are correct in doing so, journalists and reporters and pundits, that yes, there are a lot of reasons why any candidate may be particularly popular or unpopular. Again, that's their fucking job. That's what they're supposed to be doing. It's what they sit around, like, we have 24-hour news channels now, so at some point, everybody is going to just sit at a damn table and discuss somebody's favorables and unfavorables. It's part of, like, just filling up programming space. So, I don't understand, like, again, this is, to me, flattening out somebody to their gender. And I think reporters and journalists and pundits are right to look at candidates as a holist human being that has various strengths and weaknesses and flaws, and to discuss their strengths and weaknesses and flaws. Like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And as far as discussing the Native American thing, like, I'm sure it was fun for everybody for like 5 minutes, but honestly, like, does anybody really talk about it anymore? I mean, Trump did his little tweet, but it's like, it's almost kind of passé, so I don't think people are really, like, sitting around thinking about it. Whether it matters to voters or not, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever really get the chance to know. But I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out what is going on in other people's heads. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. What all this ignores is the harsh truth is when women politicians, especially women politicians who embrace a feminist agenda, overtly seek power, many American men and some American women react with moral outrage. They may not express that outrage in explicitly gendered terms, just as they may not express their anxieties about a black candidate in explicitly racial terms. They may instead cite DNA testing or hidden emails or San Francisco's cultural liberalism, or they may simply say they find the candidate's mannerisms off-putting. Again, be very cautious putting words in people's mouths that may or may not belong there. Are there people who don't like Elizabeth Warren because she's a woman? I'm sure there are. Is that everybody's reason for not liking Elizabeth Warren? No. And if you fall into the trap of thinking that, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping her. You just look like a giant fucking asshat. Like, don't do that. Like, don't do that. Don't make that same mistake again that you made with Hillary and people who had a problem with Hillary. Don't do it. We're almost done. The media's role is to dig deeper, to interpret these specific discomforts in light of the deeper discomfort that Americans again and again express with ambitious women. Journalists shouldn't ignore electability. Elizabeth Warren's comparatively low approval ratings are a legitimate news story. But the bigger story is that Americans still judge women politicians far more harshly than they judge their male competitors. Unless journalists name that unfairness, they risk perpetrating it. Okay, that last paragraph. This is something I am starting to notice as a rhetorical feint, and it's really, really starting to get on my last damn nerves. If you make a whole piece arguing thing A, whatever thing A may be, and you completely disregard thing B through Z, don't, in your last paragraph, say that things B through Z are fucking valid. If they were valid, and you really thought that way, why did you make this whole fucking piece? Like, what the hell? Like, you don't get to all of a sudden at the end of this piece be like, you know what? I mean, journalists are right to discuss her electability and her likable ratings and her favorables and her unfavorables. Well, then why the hell did you write this piece? What the hell? Like, you don't get to slap that on the end to try to justify the whole piece that you just wrote where you completely disputed that whole notion. God, that shit's annoying. Stop it. Don't do that. Your final paragraph is supposed to buttress the point that you made in your piece, not destroy it. Did these people not, like, go to school to learn how to actually write decent, like, opinion pieces or any kind of piece at all? Like, do you not understand what the point of your beginning and ending paragraph is supposed to be? Did nobody teach you? I'm beginning to think not. But overall, that's the end of that piece. Now, here's my final point, and you can feel however you want to feel about Elizabeth Warren. You can completely, 1000% buy into the idea that everybody who hates her does it because she has a vagina. Okay, your job as somebody who is running for office, somebody who is depending on people to vote you into something, local, state, judgeships, governorships, to Congress, wherever. Your job is to make sure that as many people like you as humanly possible. So, if there is a reason why people don't like you, your job is not to sit around and navel gaze and bitch about it. It's to fix it. You have to fix it. The whole point of elections, honestly at this point, is their popularity contests. So you have to be the most popular person in the room. If there's something going on that makes people not like you, you fix it. Like, that's it. Like, there's no other way through. There's no reason to sit around and complain that, oh, if you don't like Elizabeth Warren, you're a misogynist, which obviously is not true. But even if you did believe that was 1000% true, Elizabeth Warren's job at that point is to somehow make those people like her on some other level enough to vote for her if she does make it to the general election. That's the whole fucking point of politics. So, I mean, I don't get pieces like this. I don't think they're helpful for anybody except for me to give me content to talk about. It's helpful to me. It sure as hell isn't helpful to Elizabeth Warren because you basically just flattened her out. And I know I keep saying that, but it's really, I think, the best term for when people do this. It's like you just flattened someone. You just took them down to just this one part of their being. And, like, that's it. Like, there's nothing else that needs to be discussed. it's really reductive and it's really gross, and I know it's going to keep happening, and it's just, I wish people that made that argument understand how insulting that is. Like, if somebody wrote a piece like this about me, if I was ever running for president, and somebody wrote a piece about, if you don't like me, it's because you're a misogynist, I would be like, no, don't delete that. Fucking delete that. Like, don't do that to me. Don't do that to people who don't like me, because now you just made it that much harder for me to try to overcome that hurdle to make those people like me. Because once you have a group of people who are denigrating another group of people, it makes it that much harder for the candidate to reach that group of people. If you've got, again, like, if you've got, back in, like, in 2016, the whole argument was that if you were voting for Trump, it's because you did it because you were a sexist or a racist or a deplorable or whatever. All of a sudden, you made it that much harder for Hillary to ever reach those people, because now you're calling them names. And some of these names are incredibly fucking loaded. Like, if you call somebody a misogynist or you call somebody a racist, that actually does still mean something to some people. And when you do that, you lost that person. Or at least the ways you've made it very, very difficult to get that person back. So maybe the lesson that political analysts and opinion writers should have learned from 2016 is, do not alienate people that your favored candidate needs to reach in order to reach their goal of winning office. Like, don't hamstring them. Like, don't do shit like this that now she's going to have to answer for. Like, that's not a fair thing to do to your preferred candidate. So anyway, on that point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you did make it this far, thank you, as always. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.